In this presentation today, I would like to discuss about the relationship between the process of forgetting and the creative cognition by using a study by Benjamin Storm and Tricia Paddle from the University of California, Santa Cruz. So now you might wondering why I would choose this topic, since we have learned a lot about memory in this course so far. For example, long-term memory and short-term memory back to module 3. We know that rehearsal and repeating is one of the most effective way of memorizing. So how about forgetting? I believe we all have experienced the following situation when you having a cumulative final exam and you have to cover all the material and try to manipulate all of them in a limited amount of time. The faster you learn, the quicker, the more you will forget right after the exam. So here comes the question. What kind of steps does it take our brain to forget something? How active thinking can cause forgetting? How such forgetting will serve the creative thinking? With this curiosity, I found this article which name is Forgetting as a Consequence and Enabler of Critical Thinking. In this article, it conducted 4 experiments to examine the interplay of the memory and the creative cognition. Participants studied different uses for different common household objects. Before attempting to create new use for half of the objects, performance on a final cue recall task shows that trying to come up with new uses caused the participants to forget the study used, and I will walk through the 4 experiments one by one later step. The first experience consists of thinking trials and a subsequent final test. At the beginning of each trial, several uses for the common household objects were presented spontaneously on the screen for participants to study. On half of the trials, participants simply studied the use for 12 seconds. On another half, they studied the use for 12 seconds, then they had 60 seconds to try to generate a new use of the objects. There are 68 participants were studied, one half assigned to the unusual thinking, for example, regarding balloons as substitution for gum, and another half were assigned to the common thinking condition, for example, balloons as party flavor. Participants were told that they will be tested on the use later in the experience, and they should try to remember them. The result of the first experiment were shown in the next 2 pictures. The first table shows that participants told to think of unusual uses generated more usual and creative uses than participants who were told to think of common uses. And for the second chart, we can know the participants recall fewer study uses associated with thinking trials than baseline trials. And the second is the recall performance was lower in the usual condition than in the common condition. In the second experience, we want to find out whether if the participants use the studied use as hint to help them generate new uses, then the studied uses should not be inhabited and should therefore not be only subjected to thinking induced in forgetting. It should only be information that interferes with new thinking that needs to be forgotten. In experience 2, we have 34 participants were used and procedure were the same as those of experiment 1, except the participants were instructed to use study as hint to help them generate related uses. In this experiment, participants were asked to think only of the new uses and not unusual or common uses. And the result shows that there was no indication that a thinking-induced forgetting took place, and it suggests that trying to think of something completely new is the only thing responsible for the forgetting something old. As for the third experiment, we have all material and procedure were as same as those used in second one, except that they were not told to use the studied used as hint to help them create the relative use. This result states that participants almost generated uses at the same rate as the second experiment. A significant effect of thinking-induced forgetting was observed, with uses in the thinking condition being recalled less well than uses in the baseline condition. This result suggests that it was not simply the lack of direction regarding the type of uses that the subjects were to generate a second one that prevented thinking-induced forgetting from being observed. In the last experiment, participants were provided with each object's name along with the first letter of each of the words of a given study used. The objects were tested in the same order as they were studied, but use associated with each object were tested individually. This cue were meant to reduce the interference components of the forgetting effect. If the thinking-induced forgetting effects observed by the previous experiments were directly as a result of interference dynamics and tests due to the non-specific nature of the test cue, then the forgetting effect observed in experiment 3 should be greatly reduced or eliminated altogether. The result shows that significant thinking-induced forgetting was observed with participants recalling significantly fewer uses in the thinking condition than the baseline condition. In conclusion, I think the study did a really good job of showing how memory works and how memory loss can lead to creativity. While memory loss is usually seen as a negative thing, thinking-induced forgetting in the study shows that brain makes up for this by finding new ways to continue working despite losing memories.